Anita.
Welcome back to this week's Weekly Roar. It's your host, Stan the Carman, joined alongside my co-host, Dylan Oden. And we have a special guest here today. His name's Milk. For those of you that do know him, for those of you that don't, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
A lot of you know me as Milk, and if you don't know me as Milk, my name is Joseph Miller. I'm the head coach for the Halo team and the Call of Duty team here at UNA.
Yeah, Milk's been with us for, I guess, right at almost a year now.
About a year.
He's helped us out a lot. We're good friends outside of the games. I guess we've been friends since, 2013, 2014, something like that.
Probably longer than some of these people have been able to write. So it's definitely been a while for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we obviously most of you that are watching this, you guys know that I'm a bit on the older side. Milk's my age, so
You didn't have to include that. Appreciate that though. I'm definitely seasoned.
We're just going to talk about a little bit about how much the whole esports scene has changed throughout the years. And I guess I'll kick things off. I know, growing up in high school for Milk and I, video games it was something that, you could be proud of, but only inside of your own home, if you were good at them.
Yeah, so, it's definitely a whole different departure from how it was when, I would say, we were, really in the thick of it, especially, when we're the age of, the people who are in, college now or getting into college age. It definitely was, a whole different landscape, professional esports or, careers in esports, whether it's, streaming or anything like that, it just didn't exist. I think for most people, I know especially for me, video game was, an escape. It was just that place you went to just kind of decompress and have fun and you just kind of get away from everything. So it's definitely different now versus how it was when we were coming up, which, there's pros and cons to that, but I think there's definitely more pros.
Yeah, and even I know for Colton, he was kind of in the middle of that. For him, it was still it was kind of not looked on in a good light, but then it also kind of you've seen that shift a little bit. I don't know if you want to talk on that or.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting because I feel the same way you guys feel. When I was in high school, we didn't really tell people we played games. A few of us from the football team played games, and those that talked about it heavy, people looked at them differently or weirdly, and it was I thought it was cool, but I quickly realized that a lot of people didn't think it was cool. And then as I graduated, and then I'd say around 2018, 19 is when it really started to slowly take traction and become more popular. And it was really cool to see because I took a year, 2 years off college, and now coming back, I have a space where I can use my talent and flourish and be hyped about esports. I walk around on campus and people are excited to see me and stuff like that, and it's really cool because before, if I was in the gaming club in 2018 when I graduated, I don't think that would have been a thing that people would be doing. We would be going to the athletics games we are, but I don't think the players and coaches and everyone would be giving the support that they give now. And it's really cool to see where the scene's gone because we have that support from athletics and we have everyone hyping us up and stuff, and it's really sick.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's changed in many different areas. I've got to watch it go from just, really you played games at family get-togethers with, family friends and cousins and things like that, to this whole big global landscape thing where people are competing for, change your life money, honestly. Yeah. And it just wasn't always the case. I think that's probably the most noticeable thing from my perspective is the amount of money invested and involved, right? A little known thing about me is that at one point I was a top 100 ladder player for, game battles MLG for Call of Duty. And that's cool. But there wasn't really a transitionary phase for that. There was no real pro scene back then. COD was in its infancy. And there's just these guys were really just cramming together 5 to 6 dudes into a content house.
Yeah.
Hoping to make it work.
And it was even if you wanted to go compete, it was way harder to convince your parents, hey, take me to Dallas and let me compete in this tournament for $5,000
with absolute strangers.
Yeah, for $5,000.
Yeah, for $5,000.
If you flip that on its head to where it is now today, where it's hey mom, let me go compete for this tournament and possibly win $500,000. Like, they're a little bit more like, okay, like let's go do that.
Yeah, like the thing that like comes to mind the most is like what the Fortnite Booga Championship, where the kid wins and he went, was it $2 million, $3 million?
Yeah,
He
something
literally
like
just
that.
showed
It
up
was
one day, played a game,
insane.
and made $3 million.
Yeah.
And that to me is like the perfect idea of like, it's just a huge difference between where things were and where it's going. Now, I will say I do think the money is kind of staggering off a little bit as they start to kind of like figure out, you know, the perfect like, threshold for like prize pools and stuff like that. But I still think like there's a whole lot of room to grow, but I think it is going to continue to change over the next 5 to 10 years. But it's definitely solidified as a thing that's going to stay.
Yeah, I mean, even we seen a little bit of growth when we were coming up. Like,
Yeah.
like it
For
went
sure.
from being kind of like a local scene to where, I don't know if you remember, but like on USA, the channel USA, MLG would have tournaments that were televised on USA.
Yeah, I don't. Unfortunately, I didn't watch a lot on there. I think the only thing I ever caught on there was like some Battlefield tournament. Sadly,
Oh, there was a lot of Halo, a lot of Halo to be played on there.
yeah, I think I was a little too into it, so like I'd always get on the MLG like channel. That's where like a lot of people used to stream. There wasn't really a
Oh yeah,
Twitch.
like Justin TV. And
Yeah, like
MLG. Yeah.
Justin wasn't even around yet.
Yeah,
You know, it really was all your competitors were streaming on MLG, which is like, I think that's a crazy thing to think about. Is like the place where it all got started is a ghost town now. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah,
I mean, we're
and
what 2 to 3 years away from we're gonna have an entire generation of kids playing games that don't even know
what
how it
MLG
got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely sound like old heads talking to it, and I know. Stan over here is tripping out. He's like, I mean, I know a little bit, but
I know a lot
we
about
just
this,
sound
though.
like two old men, you know, rambling about the good old days. But I mean, it is. It's. We're gonna get to a point in the next 5 years where it's gonna continue to solidify itself, but it's come a long way. And the fact that it's in colleges now, I think, is like the craziest thing to me. Is like, you know, you got collegiate kids competing. Some are on scholarships in certain places, and to see that it's offering that advancement in life is it's absolutely an incredible thing to see. Especially since, like, I know you got it, our generation got it. The whole speech of like playing video games is going to ruin your life.
It'll never get you anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joke's on you, Ma. It is definitely getting people in a lot of places, and it's definitely offering opportunities to a lot of people.
Well, you know, like even like with the company Play Versus, they host high school competitions.
Yeah,
So like you can be on an
crazy.
esports team in high school,
yeah.
which is, dude, if I would have been given that opportunity,
I would have taken it and
Yeah.
ran with it.
Which I'll say this though, because I have a kind of a skewed perspective on it, right? Like, I'm happy about all the changes, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of a Puritan when it comes to like a certain aspect of it. Is like, you know, when we were growing up, if you were good at Halo, for example, you were good because you just wanted to be good.
right?
There really wasn't anything on the back half of it. You just wanted to be good. It felt good being that guy at like your school or in your friend group who was great, and you really just competed for yourself. And now you got people that are competing for like for money, and you have a lot of these organizations treating it like a job, and to a certain extent it is. But it's like when you get to that point, you do lose a bit of that purity and the beauty of it, and it does kind of turn into this whole salary thing. And you hear a lot of conversations about it now, specifically, you know, if you're on Twitter a lot, or X as they like to call it. You see a lot of people, oh, this player's not worth it. This player's not worth it. And like, we didn't have anything like that, you know, even in the competitive scene, it was just all about who's your favorite player and watching their highlights. And so we are kind of getting into that point to where it's right up there with
The NFL or
with your major sports, where it's, you know, it's less talk about like the enjoyment of watching the game grow or watching the game, you know, continue to evolve, and more so about like, oh, this player doesn't deserve this and this player deserves that. So it's definitely getting into that more professional sports realm. Probably another 5 to 10 years away from it really being like that, but I definitely think that it's on the cusp.
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I like how like a lot of scenes and stuff are leaning more into collegiate now. And it's like the amateur scenes they're still there, but it feels like they're slowly dying down, and more esports leagues are leaning into the collegiate leagues and farming that not content, but those players through college, which is really cool because it creates a ecosystem where now you can incorporate high schools and recruit high school players to play esports and stuff like that. Because like you were saying before, Dale, like I was in the same boat. I remember there was a Call of Duty tournament in Indianapolis I wanted to go to, and my dad sat me down and he's like, is this really worth it? Like, are you really going to do anything with Call of Duty? Like, come on. And I told him, and I was like, I'm not going to go to this tournament because COVID was happening as well. So, and I was like, but watch, it's going to happen. I'm going to make something of it. And, you know, now here I am. I've got a crazy club that I'm blessed to be the president of. I've got awesome people around me and great teams, and it's so much fun competing and like having that support, because it seemed like at the time like my dad was my biggest op, but now like he and my mom are my biggest supporters by far, and like I can tell them now like, hey, I'm going to Tampa in November to go to play in a LAN. They're like, all right, great, have a great time, it's gonna be awesome, go win. Is like, it's crazy how like just within a few years it's just completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of spins back to what I was saying at the beginning of this, is like in high school, like you and your buddies knew that you played games, but like that was about it. Like you wasn't like out bragging to people and like being proud of it. It was more of like you were good with your friends, and if you were the best, that was cool, but like nobody else really knew it.
Yeah, it was definitely more of like viewed as like a hobby. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people definitely had it up there with like, you know, a hobby.
A hobby,
It
or
more
like,
so than like anything like, you know, I mean, even still, if you're in the wrong like places or like the wrong circles and you tell somebody about esports, they still have a hard time like understanding it until you bring the money factor into it, until you bring the collegiate side of like scholarship opportunities and the social networking. And that's the biggest thing, right? Is like the social networking that comes from it as well. So it's definitely evolved. We'll see over the next couple years how it continues to evolve. There's obviously going to be some like pros and cons. A lot of these scenes are figuring out.
I mean, they're putting it in the Olympics, so I mean, like,
yeah, I mean, that's still kind of tough to like grasp, right? It's like esports in the Olympics is definitely going to be interesting because there's so many controversies around it, right? It's like the game you put in it. It's, you know, there's going to be controversies about like players from other countries playing in other countries. It's going to happen, and primarily our country is the biggest one, right? Like we're going to definitely have people from, you know, somewhere in Europe playing, or even Korea or Japan,
right?
Or, you know, one of these other countries where, you know, the culture there is also centered, has a huge following for gaming. And I think that's probably like the biggest point of it is like esports is kind of a globalized thing now. You know, and it doesn't really get talked about, but like a lot of sports weren't globalized until the last 20 years either, but that's kind of when they blew up. I mean, you know, I think of Michael Jordan and the Dream Team, and, you know, and that's how the NBA got globalized. You know, Michael Jordan became a worldwide celebrity, and it took the Olympics. And so that's kind of what I take away from this is like as more light continues to be shed upon it, it's just like anything else. You know, you got to practice, you have to train, you have to study up on things, you have to put time in, and it is competitive and there is passion behind it. So I do think that is going to be a big driving factor in the continued globalization of it. But
it's already globalized.
Like, yeah. I mean, it's. I think it's becoming definitely more socially accepted as these things continue to happen. But like I don't think we're the best case of it in the United States. I mean, there's definitely other countries where like there is a very heavy like very heavy like video game following.
Yeah, like Korea, kids at like 5 years old are getting put into schools and academies to just train to be esports players.
Yeah,
and it's crazy. It's
in
so
China
cool.
as well. And like the problem is like, you know, we don't have access to a lot of those viewership numbers for like events and gaming events and stuff like that for some of these countries. But like it is big and it is happening all around us, and it just kind of feels like you used to stand on one side of the fence of like you either played games and enjoyed games or you didn't, and now it just kind of feels like there's not really a fence there anymore. It does feel like it's slowly merging together, and now people may not play games, but they understand the passion for or, you know.
Yeah,
so.
It's not frowned upon anymore.
Yeah, because I talk about it all the time. Like esports and UNA is like a part of my life. I talk about it all the time with people who don't play games, people who do play games, but the people that don't play games, it's like, that's really sick. Like, that's really cool that you're good enough to even do something like that instead of it being something super frowned upon. Because, like, when I hit Grandmaster in Overwatch 1 in high school, I think it was, like, until 2020 or 2021 until I, like, were even told people that I didn't know that knew I played games that I even hit that. Or, like, even if I knew people that played games, I still didn't, like, walk around, like, flexing that. Because it was, like, my friends knew, the guys I queued with knew, and that was, like, our little achievement. But, like, you didn't really talk about that.
It was the same for, like, in Halo. Like, if you hit 50 in the MLG ranking system, it was, like, you didn't, like, your friends knew that queued with you or, like, that hung out with you. But that was, like, that was it. I wasn't going around being like,
exactly.
Yeah, bro, I queued last night and I played against Walshy. Like, I wasn't doing that at all.
I mean, I think for me, I'm still kind of going through that, right? I work full time, and so like I'm definitely at a time in my life where I didn't think I'd be involved as esports. I mean, sure, it was a pipe dream when I was, 17, 18, 19 years old, but like to come back into it at my age now at 30, it's definitely different. And the weird thing is I feel a lot more comfortable talking about it to people like in my workspace or in my social circles, and I don't feel as if I'm going to get the pushback I would have got. It was definitely ostracized, and I don't feel like I'm getting that pushback anymore, which again, I do believe it is due to the multi-layers of esports instead of it just being, people just show up at a tournament and compete. That's a lot of perception people have, but we start breaking it down for them and telling them about the career opportunities and the collegiate side of things and the professional and the money and how it all transitions into other things. You can get jobs for the esport you competed in, and you get involved in that development process or in the league itself. So like it really is a career path, and I think that is the difference. Where it used to be, you just played a game and you showed up at a tournament and somebody put up money and you were good and won and that was it. Whereas now it definitely feels like there is like an actual like industry around it that's getting explored and it's getting developed. So I do think it will continue to grow. It's just going to be interesting to see how things shape. Definitely with involvement in the Olympics, but I still don't know how I feel about the Olympics side of it. I don't know how I feel about the choice to have no shooters in it. I don't know, because when I think of
spectator games,
exactly right. A shooter is always. Don't get me wrong. There are really great esports that aren't shooters,
like Rocket League,
League of Legends, Dota,
Tekken.
Exactly, the entire fighting, the fighting arcade games. So there are games that do that, but I do think as a spectator, it's a little hard to know what's happening in those games unless you play them.
Right.
And that's where I think they're going to suffer the most. I mean, I get it from like the graphic violence side of things, but it's like you don't have to be like super involved with the COD community to
understand that,
to know that like someone's winning or not.
Yeah.
But like, to be honest, man, I've played League of Legends for over a decade now, and like, there's no way you're going to know what's happening if you have not played that game. And even if you have played the game, you still have a hard time understanding at certain times.
There's a lot of like...
There's a lot of depth. And so, like, basically, like... Is this the list? Tic-tac-bow? Chess? Just Dance as an esport might be the most... I don't really want to judge, but I got to be honest with you. I think some of these games are just crazy.
How is virtual taekwondo going to work in the Olympics? How does that work?
Why Tennis Clash? We have it. They have like a tennis division.
My question is why in motorsport? Why is it GT7? Why is it not iRacing?
That is because Gran Turismo is probably the most absolutely polished sim racing game
100%.
there is.
More than iRacing?
100%, 110%,
not even close.
without a doubt.
Yes, not even close.
These are the games in consideration.
These are the.
Okay,
there we are. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay.
The FIFA being in consideration, League of Legends, the NBA, the Rocket League, the Street Fighter, the Tekken. I got to be honest with you. If it's me and I'm on that committee, I'm pulling all of the real played current sports in the Olympics out. Right? I'm not going to make you watch the basketball participation and then make you watch virtual basketball
it doesn't make sense.
participation. It doesn't really make sense, but like the League of Legends, the Rocket League, the Street Fighter, the Tekken, those are the things that like you're really going to pull people into, because if you're the Olympic Committee, what you're really after is you're after viewership and engagement.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. you're probably not going to get people who are already watching the Olympics to watch more Olympics. They're going to watch it regardless, right? But what you're hoping is you can get people who don't watch the Olympics involved into the Olympics by watching the esports and use that as like a bridge to watch other things, right?
Yeah.
It's, a lot of the viewership stuff is based off like hours watched, ads watched, time spent watching, without breaks. So it's things like that. So it's I understand them wanting to include some of the stuff they did. I do think you get a little like viewership burnout. I mean, if I'm just a person that stands, like if you show me a game that I don't know where everything's going on, I'll watch it from the perspective of like, maybe I'm curious into it and I don't know nothing about it, so I'm going to get involved. But like if you put NBA 2K up there, it's like it's a game, but like it's still NBA, so like I'm gonna know immediately if I like it or not. So if I didn't watch the basketball portion of the Olympics, I'm not going to watch that portion either. It doesn't matter that it's virtual. I'm just not going to watch it.
Colt, do you think there's an argument for Valorant, even though it's a shooter, because it's so cartoony? Like, because you can turn the blood splatters off, right?
I think that argument fits for Overwatch and Valorant, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I think it's a gun thing, not necessarily a violence or, like, blood killing thing. I do think a lot of it has to do with just guns and stuff.
Yeah, they seem to be like taking a pretty firm stance on the FPS genre overall.
Yeah.
It's definitely, they say it right there. The reason for this exclusion is due to concerns about the violent content in these games.
Yeah, but Tekken and Street Fighter are technically violent.
I think gun violence is probably the main motivating factor.
Well, that's what it is.
Because
Because I think a lot of, but this is the thing. You're gonna go?
Is Nina going to be banned from being played in Tekken? Is Yoshimitsu going to be banned from being played in Tekken? Nina has a gun. She pulls it out in her combos and uses it.
I mean, I feel like at that point you're really splitting hairs. I think this is what we're going to have to deal with for the first iteration of this. You have to remember the Olympics are going to come in 4-year waves, right? So you're going to get your initial, and then it's always going to get expanded.
Yeah.
And I do think that list will change after the first run. It's always about how the first run goes. So obviously there's going to be spikes and and there's going to be fall-offs depending on what game's being played. I'm curious more so about the age pool. That's what I'm curious about. Is it going to be the same restrictions on the gaming side of it as it is on the athletic side of it for the
I think so. I think they've said that.
Okay, so then that changes things, right? Because like I know for esports, this is where it gets weird. Is there still an age restriction of under 18 participants can't compete in the Olympics? Or do they still allow people who are above the age of 16? Because that's the whole weird thing is professional esports has age restrictions. You can't be a certain age, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm curious about. I'm curious if like that's allowed.
While Brandy looks that up, what were you going to say, Colt?
I was going to say I think a lot of it is like most of the committee for the Olympics, like it has more Western viewpoints than it does, I think, like our type of viewpoints.
So not Western.
Not Western, yeah. Sorry, I flipped that wrong. But like I feel like there's not enough like people who care about guns.
Right.
Because it's all frowned upon and seen in a super negative light from almost anywhere outside of North America. And it's like, I think it's a weird situation, and I think that's why it's not like super prevalent, or they don't care enough to have that conversation about Valorant or Overwatch, even though most anyone you ask, like, yeah, Overwatch and Valorant are not super violent games at all. And like that argument is there and could be there, but I don't think it'll ever be had because most of the Olympics committee it's people from all over the world in a bunch of different countries, and North America is like one standalone by itself. Like Europe probably would push for it, but like outside of Europe and North America, I don't. It's hard because like they do not like guns in a lot of countries in the world.
I think they just chose path of least resistance for this to be the first run, right? You know what I mean? They could have probably ultimately included it because, like, let's be honest, it's weird that they're really anti-FPS, but, like, competitive shooting is an event in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Right? So it does feel a little
it's
feel out of place there.
Really,
so I feel like they've done this as the primary to just gauge reception see how it goes, because again, it can always be expanded. Brandon's finally got this pulled up for us here. It definitely is there are still some age restrictions on the Olympics, but a lot of it seems kind of like an Olympic event and by country. I mean, a lot of these countries, they have a restriction, nobody under the age of 13. I did see a thing on there a minute ago where it's, you can be 16 and compete, and you have to be at least 16 to compete in the gymnastics side, but you can be a diver at 14. I think we're going to run into some weird things where we may see some esports organizations
take a risk on.
I'm going to say refuse to take a risk, and they're not going to let their players that are. That's what I'm curious of. If you're, a Team Liquid or something like that, do you let your player compete in the Olympics?
like an organization.
Correct. Right. Because it's a it's not doing anything for the organization itself. So you're going to see probably some headbutts over this. Honestly.
I think also I could be remembering this completely wrong, but I think whenever it was first announced, I think the Esports Committee for the Olympics, I think they were on record saying that if you are already a pro player, you cannot compete.
Ooh.
In the Olympics.
Okay, see, then that's kind of interesting, because
I like that.
I think we're going to see some people, especially as they add some of these more mainstream games, and I'm not undermining any of the games that are being played, but I mean, I don't really know how big the Just Dance competitive community is, and I'm struggling to say that with a straight face because it just seems kind of silly. But
it could have been maybe somebody was maybe they were saying we shouldn't allow pro players because you could use this to farm for organizations.
Yeah, I mean 100%, but that is a trade-off, right? It's a lot of these professional gaming, events and divisions, they don't let people who are under the age of 18 play.
Right.
But now this Olympics is going to give you an avenue of if they're letting people who are over the age of 13 plus or 16 plus play, it's you get a good example of how good somebody can be at 16.
Right.
Now you can scout them for the next 2 years.
Yep.
So I do think there is a talent side of it that is going to be investigated and grown. It's just, I don't know. I have so many opinions that I could probably talk about it all day. I think we're still a ways away from it. So, I mean, we've definitely got time to revisit it as more information is detailed. I do think they are going to announce more games as it gets closer, because we're still a couple years away, are we not?
Yeah, I mean, we just had the Olympics.
Right. I mean, so we're 3 years away from, because they'll spend the last year prepping and setting and practicing, and it'll already be released. All the events will already be released.
The Winter Olympics are in 2025.
Yes. And I don't think the esports side would be in the Winter Olympics. I mean, although honestly, it kind of makes sense because it is indoors.
No, really, it does make sense.
It's cold outside. Let's just play games.
And also with the
I'll be honest with you, I'll be getting snug inside with a little game.
But yeah, so it is going to be in the winter.
Okay,
Olympics.
so again, we don't have too much time. We're half a year away ish.
Yeah.
So I do think that wait, if you see that there, games to be played.
Yeah, they've already got it.
It definitely seems like they're going to be adding. Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be adding those down there. I know they're talking about it right now. I definitely feel I think we'll know in the next 3 months.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we'll have to know by the end of the year for sure.
Yeah.
But it is going to be cool to see. I mean, that's something, anytime people can rock their national pride for wherever they're from, everybody always seems to be fired up about that. So I do think it is cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with this, knowing that it's in the Winter Olympics now, it kind of makes more sense to why they have stuff like archery and tennis and possibly 2K. I'd still disagree with it. I think that they should stray away from esports that are already in the Olympics. But if this was a thing where this is the timetable for the Winter Olympics, you bring the stuff from the main to the Winter Olympics and then take it out for the other Olympics and swap it for other games, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Because that way you still get basketball, even though it is the Winter Olympics.
And then in the Summer Olympics, you have snowboarding. And
yeah, that would be really cool.
That would be kind of neat.
It feels weird.
It does.
I don't think you'll see it again. I think the sporty side of it would definitely be a one and done, because at the end of the day, I don't really watch a lot of Twitch, but I'm really good with numbers and paying attention to trends and things like that, unfortunately. I don't really see a lot of viewership for the games that they're putting in the Olympics. I don't see a lot of viewership on the YouTube or the Twitch side of things. And ultimately, if you're wanting it to be viewership base, which that kind of feels like ultimately the goal, right? Is the inclusion for that reason. I just think they've kind of struck out here, so I do think they'll run this course, and then I think they will bring on people to kind of expand on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like even like the 2K League, which is like
it's like the biggest part of NBA 2K.
It's the professional league for 2K.
Yeah, but it's not even that big.
Viewership is not good at all.
Right.
No.
It's definitely a niche thing, and I think that's my issue with all of it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's ultimately niche.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is like sports games just don't have a huge following viewership wise.
FIFA does. But that's because it's soccer.
FIFA does, but that's because FIFA is global in itself, right?
But I've never seen a competitive FIFA league.
Neither have I.
Like that has some crazy viewership. I'm talking strictly like just esports leagues in terms like that. Like FIFA's big in content, but
I think I know why that is.
It's crazy. Like no esport or no sport game has a big esports. Like even Madden's huge in content. The esports scene is very small.
Not very good.
Now a word from our sponsors. Big Star Supermarket in St. Florine is locally owned and operated. They pride themselves as the local source for fresh cuts, non-prepackaged meats. They have butchers with years of experience, so if you need a special cut, just let them know. Individual customer service and 100% satisfaction is their goal.
Be sure to stock up on essentials and specialty items while you're there. So come on down to 4695 County Road 47 in St. Florine, where they never leave you holding the bag.
Since 1959, R.E. Garrison has been driven by one vision, to be the Southeast premier carrier. That same drive has been what has carried them through more than 60 years of freight.
With nationwide terminals and a commitment to excellence, Garrison is more than just over the road. They're right in your backyard, delivering unmatched service from the driver's seat. Built for trucking by truckers, Garrison knows what it takes to keep America moving forward.
Visit them at www.regarrison.com or give them a call at 256-255-5500 and get started building your legacy with them today, one drive at a time. For the Win Game Store, located at 248 Seville Street in Florence, Alabama, is home to all things trading cards and tabletop games.
For the Win is open 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week, and hosts events daily. For the Win carries a number of games including Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Bushiroad Games, One Piece, Digimon, Dragon Ball, Universus, Disney Lorcana, Warhammer, and more. They also have all of your D&D needs.
Follow them on Facebook or Instagram at FTW Game Store to see the list of events and new releases.
I think I have a good reason for that, and I think this actually probably explains to a lot of people why certain games are bigger esports than others. Typically, the things you can go in your backyard and do are the ones that do not get viewership.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can go out back and you can throw the football. You can join a local flag football community, things like that. But, like, you can't just go out in your backyard and,
Load into Summoner's Rift.
Right, or, pop a jet, or, you can't do these things. So even though, it seems silly to say it, it does seem like the fantasy setting games are typically the ones that kind of pull people in for viewership. It's definitely the ones, too, that have a highlight on skill gap.
Yeah.
And I think that sports games struggle to have a very high skill gap.
Unless it's Rocket League.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like Rocket League is probably like, I don't really count it as a sport game because it's so unique in its approach. I mean,
Right.
you can, if you really want to force it, you can be like, yeah, it's car soccer, but it's really not. It's definitely not car soccer. It's a very mechanical game. It doesn't feel like, in theory, if you played it like that and had the thought process of it like that, you should be able to sit down and play FIFA the same way, but you'll never be able to.
No.
Right? It just doesn't transition. It's definitely unique. Honestly, anytime I watch Rocket League and I pay attention to someone playing Rocket League, if you took away the screen and looked at them just using the controller, you'd think they were playing a fighting game. You would think that they are playing Tekken or, Street Fighter or something with very heavy input. It is a very mechanically intensive game.
For the most part, like usually throughout my entire life, I can sit down and load a game up, and I'm at least average at the very start.
Correct, yeah.
Rocket League is not that game.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I look like I couldn't even get a license in the game world, honestly. It's
Rocket
tough.
League's free.
Someone asked me to pass, and I knocked it in our goal. I was like, let's go. It's a very embarrassing moment for me.
It is definitely one of the most mechanical games out there.
That's how I feel with League.
But, yeah.
League's that game for me. Like, Rocket League, I picked it up easy, but, like, League, I feel lost even when I sit down and know or research or watch videos or have someone tell me something about it for an hour straight. get in the game, I'm like,
Oh,
dang,
yeah.
this is crazy.
League's such an interesting game, and there's a lot of games to it. Dota's the same way, where it's like it's tough to coach too, because what you did the game before isn't necessarily applicable in the next game. And
Even against the same team.
correct, you could run back the same picks, the same
Yeah.
team, the same sides, the same everything, and the game is completely different.
Yeah.
And so I think ultimately what it boils down to is like your successful esports and your ones that pull the good viewership are the ones that stick around and they have a path for advancement as far as like the skill gap wise.
Yeah.
Like if you've played Madden for the last 3 years, you can probably get really good at Madden, but like now you're just really good at Madden.
Yeah.
There's eventually a point where you're not going to get any better. Whereas in a lot of these games, it's you can get there's so much room to get better, but as you're constantly getting better, other people are getting better. The game is changing. I mean, League of Legends puts out updates every 2 weeks that completely rebalances the game. And anytime they have a big event, they do these massive patches that completely alters the meta for the game. And so like as the skill gap continues to increase, the analytical side of it has a whole different, difficulty increase. And so like
And that's how they keep viewership.
that's how you keep viewership. It is a different, unique experience, and people are better in certain settings with certain environments. And it's the same way, but it's, a sports game is very linear. I think that's ultimately what it boils down to. It's a very linear game.
Yeah.
Madden is linear. Everybody, if you've ever watched any of the the competitive Madden games, everybody's running like the same playbooks. They're running like the same defensive schemes.
Yeah,
Like
and
it's
like competitive Madden uses Ultimate Team players, and everybody has
Yes.
like the same players as well.
Yeah,
there's like 2 quarterbacks that are meta and like 3 wide receivers, and that's really it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like that doesn't pull viewing, that doesn't pull good numbers, because that's more of a I'll just go watch the highlights. To
Yeah.
me,
Yep.
it's like I'm not gonna watch a whole bunch of people throw incompletions on Madden. I just go watch the highlights of who scored and who won, and you can really trim that down to a YouTube short. And I think that's ultimately my thought process on a successful esport is like your highlights or the key points of the game or a match can't be compressed to a YouTube short.
Right.
If somebody can consume the entire match in under a minute, you really got to work on your product, or it's just going to fall off. And it's all going to fall off anyways, but it's just, how do you extend it? Because even Fortnite, which was, you can say Fortnite, and people who know nothing about games know what Fortnite is.
Yeah.
Even Fortnite is definitely
Unfortunately.
on the decline. Right. But even it's on the decline, and it was considered to be the most, popular, video game. It
Yeah.
had celebrities playing it, professional athletes playing it, them playing with professionals and professional streamers, and so it was this really diverse game. Probably part of the reason why esports is what it is, but it eventually is meeting the end of its progression from, all things considered, what's going on with it now. It just doesn't have the viewing and stuff that it used to. But I think everything has a shelf life. But I think that's how you keep it extended. Your game has to have some depth.
Yeah.
It's got to have some depth. It's got to have a skill gap. It's can I pick this game up and play it? And if I play it every day for the next 6 months, and I'm playing it a couple of hours every day, am I going to be way better than where I was when I started? If I do the same thing for another 6 months, am I getting better? And usually, be honest with you, they got to have a ranked, system to it.
Yeah.
That typically is like the big selling
It can't
point.
be just hidden MMR. There has to be.
Yeah,
certain
like
ways to see yourself
if
grow.
you ask most people who play Valorant, and Valorant's a massive game, but if you ask most people who played Valorant, they don't play like the quick time game modes. They're not playing normals and Spike Rush and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You'll mess around with it, but not. I would say the majority of the player base is constantly in the rank queues, and I think that goes the way for any game with a rank queue. Is the majority of your player base is going to confine themselves to that area, because we all kind of want something from our time,
Yes.
even though we're playing it for fun. There is that self-satisfaction of knowing you're improving and you're getting something from it. It's kind of like your glimpse into like a competitive atmosphere, but from like the glory of your chair in the house or your couch at the house, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Going back to the high school thing, and even like somebody that can't be ranked in something, Colton, in your group of friends that you played Overwatch with, did you have somebody in that group that just had bricks for hands?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to put somebody on blast.
Absolutely. It was my boy Andy Gilbert.
Shout out
Loved it.
Andy.
Shout out Andy. He's my best friend. He played Diva. That's all he played was Diva because he couldn't do
Man of
nothing
culture.
else. And I remember there was one night we were playing and we just kept losing because he just kept throwing on Diva. And one of our buddies who played Zenyatta and Zarya and like healers and stuff, he just went off. He was like, "We can't win a game because of you, Andy." And then Andy's like, "You're not even healing well." Like, and then he's like, "Dude, you can't shoot straight. All you do is play Diva. You literally are so terrible at the game." And it was the funniest. It was one of the funniest experiences because he just went off on him, and that was the last time we ever played with that guy as well. Not Andy, but the other guy. The guy.
I was about to say R.I.P. Andy.
He never got back on and played with us. Ever.
We've played with a lot of the same people.
Yeah,
It's so funny.
But for you, who do you think like that we played with or that you've played with in the past had bricks for hands?
Breaks for hands.
Yeah, like just couldn't buy.
It's probably Matt before I
Before you
met him on COD.
molded
Yeah,
him?
before I basically showed him how to play Call of Duty.
I thought you were gonna say like Zach or.
No, there was no. I'm gonna pick on Matt a little bit because he's definitely not the same person now. But man, when he told me how much he played and I got to play with him, I almost offered him some other hobbies to participate in. It was tough, but no, he's definitely much better now. Definitely has like the analytical side of games down, Halo specifically. But yeah, man, I love you, Matt, but. Teaching him how to play COD and AW was pretty rough, man. It was not a great time.
Mine has always been the same, and it's still the same to this day. Do you know Stetton?
Yeah, I know that.
That's the one right there.
That's funny, buddy.
Shout out Big Daddy Steady.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's tough. I'm so glad I'm not on anybody's podcast getting called out right now.
Hey, man, Stetton asked for a shout out. I had to figure out how to shout him out somehow.
Yeah.
Dude, it'll never be me. I'll never be the one getting shouted out for
I
no
don't know,
bricks.
man.
Hands for
You
bricks.
You sit here when you're
It'll never
30,
be me.
32,
Nah,
brother.
It'll never be me.
You might be the one.
Nah.
I will say this, though. The sad thing about esports is, like, it's inadvertently definitely killing off some genres of games. That you definitely don't see a lot of games that you used to see. I know for me, I've been around, in the gaming community for a really long time, and the one thing that, like, I've noticed it's dramatically killed off is, like, MMOs. MMOs used to be a very popular thing when, we were younger. I mean, dude, we were there for, like, the start of WoW, unfortunately.
RuneScape.
But, you had WoW and Old School RuneScape and, all these other MMOs. There was a new
EverQuest.
there was a new MMO every other year.
The WoW killer.
Correct.
Something was being coined as that.
Correct,
yeah.
because nobody back then wanted these short samples of progression. You wanted this long-term investment game. You wanted something that's like, oh, if I play this game 150 hours this year, I'm going to have really cool gear, and I'm going to have bragging rights for all my friends. And then the market and the industry just kind of changed with esports, and nobody wanted that as much anymore. And now people want, they want the competitive rank queues. And I think a lot of that honestly has to do with the fact you see a lot of people who either are playing sports and getting into it, so they've got that competitive nature from playing, the football and the basketball and the baseball and stuff like that, and they're coming into the gaming industry, and I think that's what a lot of it is they're still looking to find and scratch that competitive itch, and there's just not a real way to do it for athletics unless you get that, that scholarship to the next level. And I think a lot of these guys have found it, and a lot of these guys and gals have found it inside of esports. And so that's why I kind of think that shift is happening. And it's just, people want that. And that's why, even if you go check viewership on Twitch, people don't watch MMOs.
Yeah.
I was just asking me gold. But what was you going to say?
No, like, I was saying that I agree 100% with that because
Yeah.
the most recent, like, connection you can make with that with, like, one of these faster-paced yearly games, having an aspect like that, was the Modern Warfare 2 that came out. Their progression system with the guns encouraged people to use every gun, to play the game, and to have long-term progression, unlock all the attachments, and all you got was backlash. Everyone hated it. No one liked it. They wanted their attachments for the specific gun they played with, and that was it.
Yeah, it was terrible, I'll be honest with you.
But,
I couldn't even play the games.
In the same breath with the MMO thing, like I am actually kind of surprised that we didn't see like a WoW PvP esport.
Well, there was one at one time.
I know.
But it never really got off the ground, right?
Yeah.
I think that was like a big thing is like it never really got off the ground.
There was a lot of I remember I don't remember the clan names, but I remember back then when they would do it was like a monthly battle, right? And
Yeah.
there would be a map of all of the worlds in WoW, and then certain.
I think for WoW, what ended up happening with it and the MMO side is I think they could have. I just think they chose not to compete.
With esports?
Yeah, I really think that's what it is they decided because when you make a game now, I feel like esports is something you have to have in mind when you're making it. Do you want to make a competitive game?
Yeah.
And if you do want to make a competitive game, you're hoping that it finds enough success in order to become an esport, at least in your region or maybe globally. It doesn't really matter, but you're trying to find that perfect stretch. And if you're not doing that in mind, you're not going to explore it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not going to midway through your game be like, oh yeah, well now it's a competitive game. You're designing that from the ground up, in the initial launch of the game. So I just think they chose to go another path. They realized that hey, some people are going to be into it, but some people don't. And as much as gaming is getting more popular and esports is getting more popular, the casual gaming experience is still alive and well. I mean, I think that's.
Yes and no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it is. I mean, you definitely see a resurgence of interest in single player games. That there was a 5-10 year stretch where people just.
Yeah.
I mean, you really had one, but now you have people begging for your God of Wars and things like that, and people are really fine for that. I think we're getting to a point where there is that balance, but there's still some couch gamers out there, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the biggest advocate for single player
Yeah,
games.
4 days out of the week, I am a couch gamer.
Give me turn-based RPGs, please.
Yeah,
I beg
you
you.
get lost in a little bit of a story and not have to try. At 32, man,
Yeah.
I got a limited amount of energy I can get on and compete with all you
Pretty sure
19-year-olds cracked out, just absolutely flying all over the place.
Pretty sure if I keep going how I'm going, I'm gonna have arthritis in both my hands
I tell you
before
this.
too long.
I tell you right now, I had a senior citizen moment the other day for gaming. I booted a game up that I'd never played, and I read the tutorial. I went through the whole tutorial and I read all the advanced tips. And I've never done that. Used to I just mash A or mash enter.
Was it Super Vive?
Yeah, it definitely was. It was definitely Super Vibe. I was like, okay, this button does what? This key does what? I caught myself. I needed the tutorial, and then I had to accept the fact that I'm in the tutorial genre now. I'm in that part of my life where I'm reading the tutorial, and I need the advanced tips. I'm not gonna go in the game and figure it out. And I could definitely tell it's a thing too, but. Yeah, sorry. I just I couldn't get over that senior citizen moment I had for my gaming life moment. But
Colt, what is your major?
Sports and rec management.
You don't have a concentration in esports or anything?
We do have a concentration in esports. I haven't decided.
Oh, you
my
haven't decided. Have you
concentration's gonna
seen
be yet.
the Gen G Foundation thing that is over there on our handy dandy whiteboard?
I've seen it on the whiteboard. I don't think I've seen it outside of the whiteboard. I think I've heard about it a little bit, but not.
I didn't know about it. I didn't know that it was coming to North America until today. So obviously from the whiteboard there, if you're a college student and you're majoring in esports, you can sign up and they will fly you to Korea for 3 weeks to Gen G's headquarters, and you get to participate in lectures and meetings and all kinds of cool stuff with Gen G.
it's a pretty big organization to get to hang out with, honestly.
Yeah.
They kind of have the whole esports industry in a chokehold. I'm pretty sure they have representation in every single game that is played.
I think I'm gonna reach out.
Which
see what's up.
You know why though, right? You know why Gen G is so big, right?
Because they're Korean org.
Yeah, because they're in Korea.
They're in South Korea.
No. Do you know who the parent company of Gen G is?
Oh, no.
Samsung.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
that
all
makes a lot
your
of sense.
Mm-hmm.
big mega corps, your mega esport corps out of Korea, a lot of people know them. T1, you've got Gen G, and a couple others. Those are all mobile comm companies. Yeah.
All right then.
Yeah, the SKT T1,
Yeah,
they're literally a
yeah.
mobile provider.
I
mobile
knew
provider.
that T1 Mobile was a thing.
Yeah. So is KT. There used to be a big rivalry, and there still is a rivalry in League of Legends, but that's how it started. They were both mobile comms. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And that's why, like, Gen G, I mean, their parent company. See, a lot of people don't know that. Every esports organization has a parent company.
Well, yeah.
It's who they belong to.
It was like that back in the day. Like, Final Boss was owned by Gilbert Arenas and somebody else.
Correct. So, like, a lot of it is, like, that's why Gen G is so massive, is they basically have unlimited funding. And they're based out of Korea, where they have a really great gaming culture. And I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like Gen G's honestly been around since the beginning for a lot of different esports.
Yeah.
So I think that's an outstanding thing they're doing. If anybody's interested, they should definitely look into that because
that's why I brought it up was because like I didn't know what Colton's major was, and then like obviously behind the screen here we have Brandy as well, and I know Brandy's a big G2 fan, but I still think that.
Oh man, I didn't think I could dislike Brandy at all, but there it is. All right.
I just feel like
won't be coming back here, guys. Thanks for having me this time. Won't be a part of that.
I just felt like both of you guys could look into it and apply, and if you get it, that would be cool. To go hang out with Gen G in Korea for 3 weeks and everything's paid for, like, I'm going to be honest, Milk said it best. I don't know if I would come back.
I don't know if y'all would ever see me again. Where I'm at right now in life, probably would never see me again.
I'd be honest with you, they could offer me a job literally cleaning the floors and I'd figure it out from there. There's no way I'd come back.
Yeah, I'm never coming back.
It's still kind of insane to a part of me though that like that even exists, right? Like there's so many career paths inside of esports nowadays. Used to it, or even some people now, if you think of esports, right, and you think of a career in esports, you think of as a player. Which
it's not like
I'm going to be honest with you. If you're like at home right now, you're like 16, 17, even up into like your late teenage years, 18, 19, and you're trying to be an esports player, I got to be honest with you. You really need to figure out some backup options.
Yeah, because that's like trying to be an NFL player.
Correct, right? Which a lot of people tell you. It's even harder in esports, right? Because you don't have the gift of like, talent that you inherit from your parents, right?
Right.
It's not like the NBA where it's like you were born and you're 6'11".
Yeah.
And so all you really had to work on was like getting in shape and like your shooting and defensive ability, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the hardest part is like not only do you have to be good to be a professional esports player, you don't have to be good. You have to be the best. You have to be fantastic, but you also got to be lucky.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that like people don't look at enough. Is like you got to have a little bit of social networking.
Yeah.
Like. You can scroll Twitch, for example, and you will see some of the top-rated players in ladders. They're top 10 players in ladders.
But they're not a pro player.
They're not a pro player, and they barely have viewership.
Yeah.
Like, it just happens, right? So you gotta be a little lucky, and it's all time and place, man. It's just happenstance. And so, like, I think if you're aspiring to be, I think that's awesome. I think that's cool, but I think you really need to kind of, like, I think you need to do something with it other than just aspire to be a player.
Yeah.
And that's why I do think the Gen G thing is really unique is there's so many avenues to explore inside of esports where you can be connected to it and you can have a life, around it and through the industry without necessarily having to be a player.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so hard and like to just put all your chips into the basket of being a player. When you don't become a player, you can just let that ruin you.
Yeah.
Because I was the same with Warzone. Like I was winning every tournament I played in and I would have argued that there weren't many Warzone professionals that could have held a candle to me at the time. But, like, I didn't get that lucky. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have the people to put me in a place to be on those bigger teams in the bigger tournaments. And, like, I got dono-walled pretty much. Like, there's nothing I could do. And I realized that, and I didn't let it, like, ruin my future in gaming because now I'm here and life is great. But, like, definitely it's so hard. Like there's so much of a luck aspect. Like, because there's plenty of times where I went up against the big streamers and me and my squad beat them. We killed them. We took them down. And it's like,
but it doesn't.
But there's nothing you can do. Yeah,
exactly.
Literally, it doesn't mean anything.
And I'm a great example of it too. The peak of my gaming career was 13 years ago.
Yeah.
But it didn't translate to anything.
Yeah.
I shut up, joined the military, and that was my esports in right there. But like, here I'm in a later stage in life, at the age of 32, and now I'm in it, and I'm so heavily in it that like, it surprises me at times that it's a little surreal. But I do think even though it is growing and it is popular, there is these opportunities. I think you have to also be realistic enough with yourself to like know that you're probably not going to be a pro. You know what I mean?
No,
Like, and it's not even
yeah.
probably not. It's like you're realistically not, and you should bank on not being a pro versus being a pro.
Yeah, I mean, you should even if you're a collegiate esports player, it's like what Milk said earlier. Like, you should be using this as a time to network, because there's no telling where this could take you. Like, when you go to all these lands and all these places and you're talking to people, you're building relationships to where in the future, like, if they get lucky and they get in the industry, you're in.
Well,
Exactly.
think about it like this, right? Think about it from this perspective. When you go to an esports event and there's 2 teams playing on the main stage, right? Let's think about the industry as a whole. There are 10 players. If you're watching professional Call of Duty, there are 8 players on stage, right?
Yeah.
There's 4 for each team. Okay, stop yourself. How many staff are in the venue for those 8 players?
Right.
How many people are running cameras, doing lighting,
Audio.
exactly,
Yeah.
audio, any of that stuff? You know, there's so many different avenues in esports, and people aren't quite there yet on recognizing that. You know, social media is a big deal. It's actually a super big deal for esports, but it's everybody really thinks about esports as like just the player side of it. But like, you know what also they have is accounting and finance and
Content.
investment and exactly content, entrepreneurship, and a lot of them now are into apparel so graphic design. So there's so many. They're just esports is really just like any other business, and so ultimately at the end of the day, if you want to get into esports and you want to get into it just in general, think of it the same way you would at a business, right? If you want to go work at Google, you would look up kind of what it's like to be at Google, and you would do those things. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to just go to Google. I want to do, engineering at Google. It's like, okay, cool. Well, then you go that path, right? So
Yeah.
I think trying to limit yourself as your involvement into esports, like as just a player, is a little.
Yeah, no, I mean,
It hurts you.
It's a little too hopeful. I'm going to be honest,
No,
and I do feel like that is an actual problem we have right now. I'm going to be honest. There's just a lot of people too high on their own sauce, and
Nick.
yeah, definitely like Nick. But there's just a lot of people who think they're good at a game, so that's going to mean something. And it's I hate to be the person to like rain on that, but like you could be great at that game and it mean nothing.
Yep.
Right. That's the problem with esports growth is we haven't quite figured out how to, how do you go from being a great collegiate player to getting a chance at the professional stage? Because like that really hasn't been figured out greatly.
it hasn't been talked about. I mean, well,
there is, and they're doing things for it, but it's not very fleshed out. It's not a surefire catch-all.
yeah, like for instance, Last Shot, who plays for North Georgia on their Halo team. Last year, he was on UNG, but he wasn't a pro Halo player. This year, he's on UNG, and he just got top 4 at Worlds.
Correct.
In Halo.
Well, I was thinking of it more from the perspective of there's a COD player, and I can't think of his name, but he's
Fame?
in Challengers.
Oh.
And he has won, and Brady, if you can look that up, that'd be awesome, but like he's won the majority of Challenger tournaments and championships the last like 2 years. He still has not been given an opportunity in professional Call of Duty.
Oh, is it Dylan?
Dylan Rex.
Dylan Rex?
Yeah, it is Dylan Rex, and he even tweeted the other day, and he made the tweet. He was like, I don't really know what more I can do.
Right.
And there's nothing. He's winning. He's playing great, and he's doing that stuff. And someone wanted to point out he had some like semi-pro performance with some pro players who were involved where he didn't play that great. And it's like, okay, maybe he did in that instance, but if we're setting up these amateurs and these challenger, groups and stuff like that, and then like these people are excelling in that, and it's still not translating to a professional opportunity or even professional like success. I think that if you're a player, you have to look at that and understand that like it's not that the cards are stacked against you. It's every deck in the casino that night is stacked against you. So you definitely need to have some like alternative like measures in place.
I know we're kind of like running out of time, but like, do you think we should go to like a draft system or even relegations should be standardized in esports because of that?
I think there's a
yes.
world where that could happen and it could work right, but I don't think esports and the people in charge of esports would do it correctly.
League of Legends used to do relegations.
Smite used to do relegation.
Here's the thing. North American League of Legends has not been that great for quite some time. Ironically enough, North America used to have relegations, and so it forced you to always have a competitive team. Because let's be honest, a lot of these esports teams or esports orgs are just trying to make money.
Right.
You know what I mean? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a business. So like, they don't always put the best available players out there. They sometimes put the cheapest and try to flip it, and you know what I mean. So it does kind of hurt the viewing experience if you're the average viewer. You got to go out there and watch, this mediocre team perform, and it's uninteresting for everybody involved. So yeah, I'm a big encourager of relegations because it holds the organization as accountable as they're trying to hold the players.
Yeah.
If you don't perform that great, guess what? You go from being, a Pro Tier 1 to a Pro Tier 2 team.
Yeah.
And either you get your, for lack of better words, excuse my language, you get your shit together, you get competitive, and you get back up there, or you don't and you fizzle out, and it's fine. It doesn't hurt the league. And so I think, I think at a certain point it is about integrity.
I just don't know how it's like we're talking about collegiate players making the move to pro play is like in the NFL and then NHL you have a draft.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you could transition that into esports unless it's a relegation system where maybe like the top collegiate team plays against the bottom of the league team, and then if they win they just get signed.
They do that in league. I do think, and you can disagree or not agree, but I think ultimately you have to limit the amount of money required for organizations to get into your esports leagues. You got people like, no offense, but you got people like Activision that wanted, what was it,
25 million.
25 non-refundable million to compete.
Guess what? They refunded it.
They had to. They were about to get sued.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, they're charging 25 mil a piece. And not every organization can shell that out, but ultimately you just need a lot of teams.
Yeah.
That's how these people are going to get opportunities is, you got to stop, limiting its exposure by just being greedy. And unfortunately, greed is going to be a problem we're always dealing with. So,
yeah.
I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Well, that's all the time we got. As you can tell from our hats that we're all wearing, shout out Ari Garrison. Thank you guys so much for watching the Weekly Roar. I'm Odin.
I'm Stan.
This is Milk. Later.
2010.